All right, let's dive in. Today we're looking at something pretty cool in ECMAScript, and that's streams.
Streams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Streams are powerful.
I know streams might make some people think, well, that sounds a little complicated, but I think after today you'll see how surprisingly useful they are.
Yeah, they're really elegant.
Yeah.
They're a really elegant way to handle data.
Okay.
In our applications, bit by bit, we don't have to load everything all at once.
Right. So it's all about efficiency,
Yeah, exactly.
especially when we're thinking about things like real-time updates or processing a large file or something like that.
Exactly. The code examples that you've provided, really show how creative and practical streams can be,
Okay.
especially when it comes to web development.
Awesome. So let's jump right into it.
Yeah.
This first one here, readable from element event.
Okay.
It looks like we're doing something with DOM events.
Yes. This is really cool because we're creating a readable stream from any DOM event.
Okay. You can think of, and it's a game changer for managing user interaction because instead of having like all these separate event listeners that are scattered throughout your code, you can centralize all that logic into a single stream.
Oh, I see. So it's like having one central command center for a specific event, like a click or something.
Exactly. Think about how much cleaner your code will become, especially as your application grows. And then you won't have these tangled webs of event listeners that can turn into a nightmare.
Right. And it's so easy to lose track of event listeners if you have them all over the place.
Oh, for sure.
And then you start getting weird behavior.
Exactly. Yeah. And debugging is a total breeze when you're using these streams.
Okay.
So this is especially helpful for single-page applications where you might have different parts of the UI reacting to the same event in different ways throughout the life cycle of the app.
Right.
So yeah, it's very cool. It brings order to the chaos and makes your code much more maintainable.
I like that, bringing order to the chaos. So let's move on to readable from element mutations. This one uses something called Mutation Observer.
Mutation Observer.
Yeah, have you ever used Mutation Observer?
I have, yeah.
I've always been a little intimidated by it.
Yeah, well, it's actually not as scary as it sounds.
Okay.
Mutation Observer lets you create a stream of changes to an element's attributes or children. And so imagine you want to build a dynamic interface where certain parts update automatically whenever a specific element changes. Mutation Observer is your secret weapon.
So are you saying instead of constantly checking for changes or setting up a ton of event listeners, I can just set up a stream and have it just do its thing?
Yeah. It's all about building reactive interfaces that respond intelligently to DOM changes without all the manual work.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So I'm already thinking like dashboards that update in real time or forms that validate as you type. Is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
Yeah, you're exactly right. But, before you get too carried away, it is important to note that using Mutation Observer can have performance implications if you're not careful.
Right, of course.
But luckily, there are strategies for optimization. For instance, this example, this attribute value stream example, shows how you can filter out irrelevant changes.
Yeah.
So that way you're only reacting to the mutations that actually matter.
That makes sense. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Like with any powerful tool, you have to use it wisely.
Absolutely.
And not go crazy.
Yeah.
So let's look at this next one, readable for. So this one seems to be all about tracking specific attribute changes for a specific element.
Exactly.
Okay.
So this one's more targeted than the broader Mutation Observer approach.
Okay.
This is perfect for situations where you need to keep an eye on a particular attribute and react to its changes with like pinpoint accuracy.
Okay.
Think about things like form validation or triggering UI updates based on an attribute's value. These are things that traditionally you might have involved like, complex event listeners for or constant polling.
Yeah, I could see that. I've definitely written code like that before where it's like, oh, let me just constantly check to see if this thing has changed.
Yeah.
And then I'll update the UI or do whatever I need to do.
But with streams, you don't have to do that.
That's pretty cool. It's like we're unlocking a whole new level of control in our web development.
Yeah.
So what's next? I'm excited to see what else is coming.
Okay, so this one's called Get Selector. This is all about programmatically determining the CSS selector for any clicked element on a page.
Oh, wow. That sounds like it could be really useful for things like, I don't know, web scraping or even like automated testing.
Yeah, you're spot on.
Or like an interactive tutorial that highlights specific elements.
Exactly. It's like you're gaining X-ray vision into the DOM, allowing you to pinpoint elements with precision and automate tasks that would otherwise be tedious and manual.
Wow, that's a really good way to put it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got some snippets here that deal with dynamically adding scripts to the page and something called hydration. What's going on with that?
Yeah, so these examples dive into the world of script loading and accessing their context. They highlight the differences between traditional scripts and the more modern modules that you might use with the type module attribute.
Right, because those are two different things these days.
Yes.
Right? Modules are all about organization and reusability, but I know there can be some challenges when it comes to accessing DOM elements from within a module.
You're exactly right. One of these snippets actually addresses that specific challenge. It shows how you might run into problems when you try to access nearby DOM elements from within a module scope. And then it cleverly uses import.meta.url as a workaround.
It's really cool to see how these really specific sort of edge casey type situations can be addressed really elegantly using streams.
Yeah, for sure. And this last one we've got here, backoff strategy, seems to be dealing with error handling and application state.
Right. Error handling, always important, but not always the most fun to deal with.
Right.
But definitely essential.
Right. And this snippet uses a stream pipeline to handle errors that might occur in your application logic and provides a mechanism to restart the application if necessary.
So that sounds really useful.
Yeah.
Because, in real world applications, things don't always go smoothly.
Right.
You're going to have network errors or unexpected data issues.
Exactly.
And being able to handle those things gracefully is really, really important.
Absolutely. This example really demonstrates how you can use streams to build resilience into your applications to make sure that they keep running smoothly, even when you're faced with the unexpected.
I like that. Yeah, because it's one thing to write code when everything is working perfectly.
Right.
But as soon as you get out in the real world, you're going to find all kinds of edge cases and weird issues. And things are going to go wrong. And so you have to handle those things.
Yeah.
So it's awesome that streams provide a way to do that.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's incredible to see how versatile streams can be.
Yeah.
And they really seem to elevate web development to a whole new level.
I agree.
From simple event handling to these complex techniques for managing state and dealing with errors. But this is just the beginning of our exploration of ECMAScript streams.
Yeah, we're just getting started.
We have much more to uncover, so stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive.
Awesome.
Where we'll delve even deeper into this fascinating world.
I can't wait.
So we've seen all these cool things that streams can do.
Yeah.
But I think it might be helpful to take a step back for a second. And talk about what's going on under the hood.
Okay, sure.
What actually makes streams so powerful and efficient.
Okay, so at their core, streams are all about managing data flow. They provide this way to process data sequentially, bit by bit, without having to load everything into memory all at once. And this is really crucial when you're dealing with large data sets or real-time information.
I see. So it's like streaming a movie, right?
Exactly.
You don't have to download the entire file before you start watching it.
Exactly. Yep. Perfect analogy.
Okay, cool.
It makes applications more responsive and efficient, And it gets even more interesting because these streams can be chained together, transformed, and manipulated in a bunch of different ways. Think of it like a pipeline where you start with raw data and then apply different filters, transformations, operations, to get the exact output that you need.
So it's like a data assembly line.
Exactly.
Start with raw materials, and each step you refine them further.
Yeah.
Until you end up with a polished, finished product.
Exactly.
I like that.
And the entire process can happen asynchronously. Meaning your application can continue doing other things while the stream is processing data in the background.
That's pretty cool. Now, that makes me think of multi-threading and parallel processing and things like that.
Yeah.
Is it really that sophisticated?
It can be. But the great thing about libraries like Most.js is that they take care of a lot of that complexity for us.
Okay, that's good to know.
So you don't have to be a concurrency expert to use streams effectively.
That's good, because that's not my area of expertise.
Yeah, and, using streams can take a little bit of getting used to. Especially if you're coming from a more traditional synchronous programming background.
Right, because you have to kind of wrap your head around how data is flowing through your application.
Exactly, yeah.
But it sounds like once you get the hang of it,
it
can actually make your code more readable and maintainable.
Absolutely. By breaking down these complex operations into smaller steps, you end up with code that's easier to understand, easier to reason about, and easier to debug.
Right, because you're not trying to untangle this giant mess of code.
Exactly.
You have these nice discrete steps.
Exactly. And as we saw with the examples, streams can be used for a ton of tasks.
Right.
From simple event handling to complex application state management.
Yeah, it's really impressive. And you know what? Some of the stuff is just plain clever.
Right. I agree. There's like a certain elegance to working with streams.
There is.
It's like solving a puzzle, finding the perfect combination of transformations and operations to achieve the desired outcome.
Yeah, and when it all works together perfectly, it's really satisfying.
Absolutely.
Like that get selector example we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Where you can just grab the CSS selector for whatever you click on.
Yeah.
It's like having a secret weapon.
Yeah, it's really cool. It unlocks so many possibilities for debugging, testing, and even building new kinds of interactive applications.
Exactly, yeah. And, speaking of practical applications, let's talk about error handling again.
Okay, yeah.
It's great that streams can help us manage errors, but what does that actually look like in Cade?
Well, like the back-off strategy snippet shows, you can integrate error handling right into the stream pipeline. So you can introduce logic at various stages to recover from issues or retry operations if necessary.
So instead of having a bunch of try.catch blocks everywhere,
yes, exactly,
we can just handle those things directly within the stream.
Yep, makes it a lot more consistent and a lot easier to manage.
Yeah, because when you start having try.catch blocks all over the place, it just gets really hard to follow.
Exactly.
And it seems like streams just encourage a more structured approach to web development in general.
Absolutely. They force you to think about data flow in a more deliberate way.
Right.
And, by breaking things down into smaller steps, you naturally end up with code that's more modular, reusable, and easier to maintain.
It's like we're moving away from these ad hoc solutions that we've been using for so long.
Yes.
And we're going towards a more systematic and elegant approach.
Absolutely.
I like that.
It can really have a big impact on the quality and the maintainability of your code.
Now, this might be a silly question, but are streams supported in all modern browsers?
That's not a silly question at all. That's a very important question.
Okay.
And the good news is that, yes,
Okay.
streams are very well supported in all major browsers.
Awesome.
The Streams API is now a standard part of ECMAScript, so it's meant to work seamlessly across different environments.
That's great, because I would hate to learn all this stuff and then find out.
Right.
And it only works in one specific browser.
Exactly.
So this has been a really, really interesting look at streams.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground, from the fundamentals to practical applications, but we're not done yet.
Nope.
There's still more to explore.
Mm-hmm.
So in our final segment, we're going to venture into the wider world of stream libraries.
Okay.
We're going to compare different approaches.
Sounds good.
We're going to talk about how to choose the right tool for your needs, so stay tuned. So we've been focusing a lot on most.js.
Yeah.
But I know there are other libraries out there too, like RxJS and bacon.js and things like that.
Right, yeah.
It's kind of like we've opened this treasure chest of possibilities.
Yeah.
But how do we even know where to start?
Well, it is kind of like a treasure chest.
Yeah.
Because there's this whole ecosystem of libraries and tools built around this core Streams API.
Right.
And they each offer their own kind of unique approach and capabilities.
So how do we pick the right tool for the job?
Well, that's a great question.
Yeah.
And the good news is that once you kind of understand the fundamentals of streams, you'll find that it's relatively easy to transition between different libraries.
Okay.
So it's more about finding the library that best suits your personal preferences and project requirements and team dynamics and all that kind of stuff.
So it's not like there's one library to rule them all.
Right.
It's really about finding the right tool for the job.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and each library has its own strengths and weaknesses.
Right.
And so the best choice for you is really going to depend on things like how complex your application is, the size of your team, and even your coding style.
Okay, so what are some of the key differences between these libraries? Like, what sets them apart?
Well, let's start with RxJS.
Okay.
That's one of the most popular, mature stream libraries out there.
Okay.
It's got like a comprehensive set of operators. It gives you this incredible flexibility to manipulate and transform streams.
Okay.
Like in countless ways.
Is it kind of overkill, though, for smaller applications?
It can be, yeah.
Okay.
RxJS is known to have a bit of a steeper learning curve than some other libraries.
Yeah.
And its vast API can be a bit daunting at first.
Right.
If you're just working on a small project,
Yeah.
maybe it doesn't make sense to use something that's quite so heavy duty.
Right, right. So for smaller projects, maybe starting with a more lightweight option would make more sense.
Exactly.
Like most.js or bacon.js.
Exactly. Those provide like a simpler and more streamlined approach to stream processing,
Okay.
which makes them ideal for projects where performance and a smaller footprint are top priorities.
that makes sense. So it's like choosing between a really powerful but complex framework and a simply but more specialized tool.
Yeah, exactly.
And the right choice depends on what you're trying to do.
Great. And another thing to keep in mind is the community aspect.
Oh, yeah.
The larger libraries like RxJS tend to have more extensive documentation, tutorials.
Yeah.
And, a vibrant community you can tap into for support.
Right. That's always helpful.
Yeah, which can be really valuable when you're learning something new and you're trying to figure things out.
Yeah, for sure. Because I know I've run into issues before, and the documentation doesn't really cover it.
Right.
And it's nice to be able to, reach out to the community.
For sure.
And get help.
Yeah. And as you get more comfortable with streams, you might even find yourself exploring even more specialized libraries that are tailored to certain domains.
Right.
Like reactive programming or functional programming. There's a lot of different options out there.
It's really amazing how many different tools and libraries there are these days.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep up.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think we've just scratched the surface here
of
what's possible with streams.
Absolutely.
And it's really exciting to see where things are headed.
Yeah.
They really encourage us to think differently about how we build web applications.
They do. They encourage us to think more deliberately about data flow and reactivity and asynchronous operations.
Like we're moving away from this old school event-driven programming model.
Right.
And we're going towards something that's more stream-driven.
Yeah, it's like a paradigm shift.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really cool.
It is. Streams offer a much more holistic and powerful way to manage the flow of data and events in our applications.
And as the web continues to become more and more interactive and, data intensive, I think streams are just going to become even more important.
Absolutely.
So this has been a really incredible deep dive into the world of ECMAScript streams.
It has.
And I have to say, I'm feeling really inspired to start using streams more in my own projects.
Awesome.
So, listeners, we hope you've enjoyed this journey as well.
Yeah.
We encourage you to keep exploring, keep experimenting, and see what amazing things you can build with streams.
Absolutely.
So until next time, happy streaming.